arisen in the course of the demand for the right to protest in Nigeria. And that's talking about food security. The National Bureau of Statistics has told us that the prices of food items have gone up by well over 250% in the last 2-3 months, at least since the beginning of the year. And that is leading to quite some level of insecurity across Nigeria. But we're talking about food insecurity at a different level now, looking at GMOs. What are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms coming into the Nigerian agricultural space. And I have joining me this morning the founder of Health of Mother Earth Foundation, HOMEF, Nnimmo Bassey, who's going to speak with me concerning this. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Good morning. It's great to see you.
Now, the talk about genetically modified organisms has been on for quite a while, but it still doesn't seem to resonate with very many people in the country what these are. What exactly are GMOs then? Let's start from there.
Well, to start with, I think the issue is not resonating with Nigerians because people don't even know much about it, and we don't need it. Genetically modified organisms are, simply put, organisms whose genetic material has been altered by inserting pieces, I would say, from unrelated species. In other words, you want to improve, in quotes, a plant, you take a genetic material from an animal and insert in that plant. And these are things that don't happen in nature. You don't cross an animal with a plant to get a different kind of seed. And so what you have as GMOs are seeds and plants or animals that don't exist in nature. They look like, physically looking at them, they look like other natural organisms, but in their makeup, in their genetic makeup, they've been altered by introducing DNA materials from unrelated species. So that's what GMOs are. They're mostly genetically modified for two basic reasons. And there are other reasons that are being touted, but they're all actually very mythical. One is crops are modified to withstand certain chemicals. They call them herbicide tolerant. So you genetically modify cotton or maize, for example, and then you plant it, and when it's growing on the farm, you can spray these herbicides across the whole farm. Everything else would die. Every other plant would die. The weeds, the races, other things land races, other things would just go, except those ones that were genetically engineered. Secondly, they're engineered to withstand pests, like the BT cotton that was approved in 2016 in Nigeria, as well as BT beans that was approved 2 years ago. That one means that the organism would kill the pest that is identified to be attacking it. In other words, that organism, that plant has become a pesticide. So if you're eating the GMO beans in Nigeria, you're actually eating a pesticide because it's designed to kill a pest.
Eating a pesticide doesn't sound very healthy, does it?
No, not at all. And that's why we have to call it what it is, because that's what it is. And, it's targeting certain pests, but it can also affect other pests. Other living things. For example, the ones that live inside our guts and the ones that live in the soil. So it's something that needs to be considered. That's why every GMO, before they are approved, have to undergo very rigorous risk assessments and confined field trials, and then there should be tests. But we've not really had long-term tests about what this means to human beings when they eat them. Most of the tests conducted by those who promote these organisms don't last more than 90 days. And we don't eat GMO. You're not going to eat GMO for only 90 days and then say, okay, I'm fine. Some things could happen way down the road. And what happens if that does occur? The biosafety law in Nigeria does not allow for strict liability, which means if you eat the GMO today, something happens to you down the maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, those who brought it will go scot-free because they're not going to be held to account. And some of us are demanding a modification of that law. If you don't want to abrogate or ban GMOs completely, you want to review the law, then review the law to include the fact of strict liability, as well as what most people ask about, labeling. How do we know what a GMO is?
Yeah, the issue of labeling is one that is critical too, because you really can't tell what is GMO and what isn't when you go into the shops or when you go to the grocery, to the grocers to pick up your groceries. But the Minister of State for Environment, Isiaq Salako, did say that all the necessary processes were followed, because I'm talking about the teller maize now, because you mentioned maize earlier on. I'm talking about teller maize now, which is it's been genetically modified to be pest resistant and drought resistant as well. But the minister said that the processes, the requisite processes were followed before it was introduced, and the GM cowpea by the National Biosafety Management Agency to ensure environment and health safety. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Minister of State was speaking like a politician. He's speaking like a government official. Recently, since the Director General of NAFDAC said on live TV that GMOs, that they're not convinced that GMOs are safe for human consumption, and they've not approved any. I've heard government officials saying, well, we have to speak with the same voice, have to speak from the same perspective. But this exactly is all. Speaking from the same perspective, pushing the wrong argument is bad governance that youth success should end in Nigeria. So we don't want to see a situation where, okay, we're now speaking, saying the same thing, and then you push what is not correct to people. The teller maize hybrid seed given to farmers, I mean, everybody knows that genetically modified. But if you look at the package from the pictures we saw at the rollout of that maize, it's not written that it's genetically modified. It just said hybrid teller maize. So most farmers will be happy to receive improved seeds, because they're looking for certain things that government tells them they will get if they use improved seeds. Who would not want a seed that is said to improve? But we have to say also, how is that seed improved? Is a seed actually improved? Who improved it? For what purpose? And how accessible is that? Now, if farmers, we're talking about food prices going up in Nigeria, and some people believe that because when you bring GMOs, it's going to make food cheap and surplus all over the place. It's not true. It is not true. Now, these seeds, the maize seeds, you buy them, and those who made it will agree with this. If you plant, of course, it will give you corn, you harvest it, you keep some and plant again, which is what our normal farmers do normally, you're going to get very poor yield. That happens to hybrids, whether they're conventional hybrids or genetically engineered hybrids. So the farmer is constrained to always go to the shop.
Let me get something right. When you plant the first time or the second time, when do you get the poor yield?
When you plant, the first time you go to the shop to buy the seeds. You don't pick them by the roadside. So you buy the seeds, you plant them, you harvest, you keep. Normally our farmers will keep from part of the harvest. They don't sell everything, they don't eat everything for planting. But when you plant the seeds you harvested, you're going to end up with very poor yield. So farmers are constrained to always go back to the shop. To every planting season, they have to buy bags of seeds to plant. They can't preserve. So I do not see how that would end up giving Nigerians more food, because farmers are going to be pressed to it. Except you give a lot of subsidies, farmers would not be able to keep up buying seeds at every planting season. This is a big risk, and it's going to challenge not just our food sovereignty, but also our food security.
Are there any examples that we can draw from in Africa?
Well, you know, the country that has planted most GMOs is South Africa. They've done it for quite a while. And if I should use the cotton example, when they first introduced BT cotton, which is what Nigeria, one of the first GMO Nigeria approved for planting in 2016, Sunday, 1st May 2016, they approved BT cotton. Now the whole argument, I'm not digressing, but let me just say this. The whole argument was that our textile mills are dead because there's not enough cotton. Now, since 2016 and 2024, this is how many years now? At least 8 years. We have not seen any cotton pyramid. We have not seen a lot of cotton in the market, or the textile mills coming back to life. So we planted genetically modified cotton. Now we are back in business. It doesn't happen. It doesn't address the issue. In South Africa, when farmers, small-scale farmers, because small-scale farmers is the main target now of the genetically modified promoters, because industrial farmers would easily adopt GMOs because they do monocropping, monoculture. Now, small-scale farmers don't engage in monoculture, otherwise they'll starve, or they will not have nutrition that they need, balanced nutrition they need. So they plant okra, they'll plant corn, they'll plant other things on the same piece of land. Now, in South Africa, where small-scale farmers in a place called Makatini Flats planted BT cotton. The first time they were taking them around the world, show how prosperous they are. So they bought four-wheel drives, married more wives, so that more than one wife, and so on and so forth. And that was because they had a lot of subsidies and financial backing. The moment those backings were removed, the entire experiment collapsed. And it could happen in Nigeria if we insist on going on that path. But there is no reason whatsoever for Nigeria to have approved GMOs. I think we were rushed into it. But the first agency the Nigerian government set up was the Nigerian Biotechnology Development Agency. We set up an agency to promote biotechnology. Biotechnology is very broad. You have biotech in medicine, in industrial processes, and in food. But in Nigeria, we're emphasizing on food. What happened to technology for industry, technology for medical purposes? These are areas that we could easily go to and have less concern or less worry by Nigerians. But food is not a thing. Food is not a thing that you toy with, because food is not just something for the belly. Food is a thing that is part of our culture, part of our celebration, part of our spirituality, is part of our social fabric. You welcome people to your home by food. And some foods, we don't just go for one variety. GMOs, apart from being monoculture, they also promote single traits. They don't promote mixed traits. Like if you have corn, in the past you buy a corn and when you open it up, you find some seeds are black, some are different colors. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
But now if you buy GMO corn, it will be one color. And the taste will just, in some countries, when we eat food, sometimes, like if you eat carrot, for example, one of the things you enjoy about carrot, apart from the taste, is how it sounds. The crunch.
The crunchiness, yeah.
Exactly. So you enjoy that. So it's not just about nutrition, it's about also the whole atmosphere around food. Now, in Malawi, some years back, they introduced GMO corn. And it started creating problems in marriages. Because when the women tried to prepare it the way they were used to eating it, the husband, the texture was not the same. And there were quarrels in families. In fact, they call it broke marriage, like breaker of homes. So I'm just saying this to show that GMOs will produce monocultures, and our minds are not monocultural. We are diverse people, and we need biodiversity.
Could that be what affected Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe used to be known as the food basket of Africa, because they also adopted GMO at some point.
Well, I think the problem of Zimbabwe is more complex than that. It's political, it's external pressure, and that's also the problem we have in Nigeria. It's a lot of external pressure to force Nigerians to accept genetically modified organisms. Because one thing is, if you like the species are planted in Nigeria, is certainly going to penetrate our neighboring countries. Our borders, we're brothers and sisters living across borders. There's no border restriction. So you're going to infiltrate and pollute, contaminate the natural species in Cameroon, in Chad, in Niger, in Benin Republic. And we should be concerned about that. We should respect ourselves by being the big brother if we agree to be that and protect Africa.
I think I want to go back to something you said much earlier about replanting of GMO seeds. It seems to mean that after the first planting of GMO seeds, subsequently replanting it is a fruitless venture. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I said you're going to get poor harvest.
Poor harvest.
Yeah, well, it's good because
if the harvest is poor, then it doesn't make sense to invest in that kind of venture.
It doesn't make sense really to invest in what is going to make you poorer. It's not going to give you the best food. It has its own risk and so on and so forth. So why are we? What Nigeria needs is to support small-scale farmers, support our researchers. Whoever supports research will likely influence the outcome. Who is supporting the GMO research in Nigeria? You need to just look at that. Who developed telomerase? Telomerase is not a made in Nigerian seed, although they may like to claim that. It traces back to Monsanto, Bayer, Bill Gates Foundation, and the rest. And they should be proud to own it and not give to Nigerians who will say, oh, we produce this ourselves. In fact, if you did some part of it, when Nigerians assemble cars, we don't claim that we manufacture those cars, do we?
We say assembled in Nigeria.
Assembled in Nigeria. So GMOs are assembled in Nigeria, more or less.
But Nigeria has quite a number of agricultural research institutes.
Precisely, but most of them are now influenced to look at GMOs rather than look at how to help Nigerian farmers work with local varieties, work with the diversity that we have. And this is a big problem. We used to have a lot of agricultural extension officers in the past who would go to villages. Now there are very few. The whole thing was decimated by the Structural Adjustment Program, which was a program to destroy our economy, and which is the ideas of the program that is still influencing the current economic system we're running in Nigeria. Things that make life difficult for Nigerians, that make the economy not work in our favor, but ties up to, people used to say external debt, but now it's going to be eternal debt that you can never pay no matter how many years you have.
So why is government going ahead to approve the use of GMOs instead of charting a way forward internally, despite the fact that government over the past 50 years has invested so much money into these research institutes across the country? If you go to Ibadan, you find so many of them supported by the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture.
Yeah.
So what is it? Is it a new form of imperialism?
The International Institute of Tropical Agriculture is also a hotbed for GMOs.
Oh, really?
They've done testing for GMO cassava to hold more starch, to have more starch. I don't know what, if that may be for industry, and cassava to have certain vitamins. Umudike, root crops, has also been involved in cassava testing, GMO cassava. So again, it's about who is funding the research. And we have to get back our brain and fund our institutions, fund our universities, fund our researchers to work to defend Africa, work to defend our own best interest, and not depend on parroting argument, parroting statement like GMO, any GMO we approve is safe. Who are you to say it's safe? For how many? There's been no consensus in the world. And that's why some countries have banned GMOs. They won't allow them. Some only allow importation of finished of the seeds and not the planting, which means there's no consensus. Means that there's serious concern, and we shouldn't be dragged into that game.
So what's your advice to government now?
It's simple. Now, before we go too far, we should retrace our steps. I like what the House of Reps said, that they should put a halt on approving new GMOs. We should go a step further and actually put a complete moratorium, maybe for 2050 or I mean, just like they do with climate change, they say we are going to achieve net zero by 2050. Why can't you say the next 40 years we're going to wait and do more research, or just say we're going to wait completely? Research can continue. People can continue experimenting on GMOs in the universities, in the laboratories. That's okay, but don't bring them out in the field. This is the time for Nigeria to support our farmers. I just listened to the last show about Nigeria's I'll give you a bag of 25 kilogram bag of rice, and I heard somebody saying for the next few months that bag of rice will sustain his family. It's not true. If nobody's going to eat only rice is just one component of what we're eating. We need biodiversity. So Nigerians should be encouraged to have gardens at their backyards, gardens on their balconies, gardens if they have flat roofs on their roofs. In every community, we need community gardens. We need to support our small-scale farmers. These are the ones feeding the world. Globally, small-scale farmers produce 70% of the food that the whole world is feeding on. But unfortunately, I mean, the industrial agriculture, which sometimes sounds so interesting to governments, they also produce some 30% of the food. But a whole lot of food today goes to waste, not because there's no food, but because either people don't have access to the food, they can't afford to buy the food, or there's no access to the farms. Our rural infrastructure can be so wretched. Even the major infrastructures are wretched. So the rural infrastructure is not there. Even if the farmers, if they plant GMOs, they still won't get to the market. So the thing is to look at the parameters. How do we support our farmers? How do we get them to grow crops on the principle of agroecology, where they can produce the fertilizer themselves, produce manure, compost, and also produce organic herbicides and pesticides without having to go to the laboratories or go to get artificial inputs that end up destroying our soils.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it at that this morning, but thank you very much for coming on the program, of course, telling us what GMOs are and why we should not be planting it or even consuming it in Nigeria.
Anybody, we should look at the labels on whatever we buy in the shop. Some of them are labeled, made with genetically engineered material. Some cornflakes, some biscuits, some things that children love to eat, some cakes, some ingredients used in making cakes. And we should also understand that we cannot label akara, say GMO akara, or GMO roasted corn roadside. And that, if you cannot do that, it breaks the law itself, the law that governs biosafety. And the government should be aware that they should not promote the breaking of the law. If you cannot label it, don't produce it and don't send it to the farms.
All right, thank you very much. Nnimmo Bassey, the founder of the Health of Mother Earth Foundation, HOMEF, joining me this morning to look at genetically modified organisms and, of course, what impact they would have on Nigeria and, of course, our agricultural sector. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going on now to the third conversation for this morning.